When Artemis 2 went around the moon and came back, people said the usual thing. The astronauts had crossed the vast emptiness of space, that great void, the nothing between worlds. A lovely phrase, heroic, poetic, and completely wrong, because space isn't empty. It contains radiation, particles, debris, gravity, fields, old machinery, new machinery, and the usual invisible commotion of physics getting on with itself. So what actually crossed cislunar space was not humanity drifting nobly through nothingness. It was actually a very expensive engineered tube full of anxious primates and wiring, which is still impressive, just less clean. And that phrase stuck with me, the emptiness of space, the nothingness between here and there. Well, because there isn't nothing between here and there, or here and anywhere else. There's never quite nothing. This raises a small but irritating question of what do we actually mean by nothing? Because it's one of those words everyone understands perfectly well until they're asked to define it, and it kind of starts chuckling quietly and heads for the door. A lot of the trouble is grammar. Nothing behaves like a noun. It sits in a sentence exactly where a thing would sit. Nothing existed before the universe. Nothing frightened me. Already we should be suspicious because language has taken a lack and dressed it up as an object. It's put a coat on an absence and told us to sit still while philosophy asks it questions. And that's where the rot sets in, because if nothing exists, then obviously it isn't nothing. Anything that exists is something, however strange, however thin, however abstract. It's joined the furniture of reality. But if nothing doesn't exist, then what exactly are we talking about? And that's the snag. The word looks useful right up to the point where you ask it to account for itself. Then it starts sweating. Nothing's the problem, not because it's mysterious, but because it may not be a thing at all. It could be and might be a word pretending to name something when really it's pointing at the failure of naming, which is annoying, because I only came here to talk about space and now grammar has kicked the table over. In ordinary life, we use the word nothing without much difficulty. There's nothing in the fridge, nothing on television, nothing in the drawer. But usually what we mean is not absolute non-being. We mean there's nothing of the thing I currently want. The fridge still contains air, a light, some smells, possibly a jar of something morally ambiguous stuffed at the back, maybe half a lemon that's entered a new stage of civilization. So when we say there's nothing in the fridge, we don't mean there is no fridge, no space, no time, no matter, no structure and no possibility. What we mean is there are no biscuits, which is serious but not metaphysics. Ordinary nothing is usually selective absence. No milk, no food, no point. And that works perfectly well. The trouble begins when we take the everyday word and drag it into deeper questions. Did the universe come from nothing? Is death nothingness? Could there once have been nothing at all? They're not fridge questions. Those are questions about total non-being. No things, no space, no time, no laws, no observer, no frame. Not even a sad little shelf with a jar on it. And that's where the word betrays us, because obviously emptiness is not nothing. A room with nothing in it is still a room. A vacuum is still a physical condition. An empty stage is still a stage. Even a blank screen is still a screen. Nothing, if we mean it seriously, can't even have a backdrop. And the moment we give it one, we've cheated. This is where I think the distinction matters. There's a human nothing, and there's an objective nothing, and they're not the same. The human version we know very well. We know loss, silence, blankness, the empty chair, the call that never comes, the room after someone has gone, the thing that should be there but isn't. Human beings live among absences, quite often more vividly than amongst presences. A missing person could fill a room more completely than the people still in it. A withheld apology can shape a family for years. A silence can become architectural. That kind of nothing is real, not as an object, not as a lump of nothing you could put in a box and label, but as experience. We're built to notice what's missing. We organise meaning around absence all the time. The person not at the table, the answer not given, the future that didn't arrive. That's the nothing we know, the one made of lack, memory, grief, omission, expectation, failure. But the objective nothing is different. Objective nothing means the total absence of everything whatsoever. No objects, no mind, no space, no time, no laws, no structure, no possibility, no experience of it. And that version may not just be difficult to imagine, it may in fact be impossible. Because obviously the minute you try to picture it, you smuggle something in. Try to imagine absolutely nothing. Go on, I'll wait. What did you picture? Darkness? A void? Blank space? A blank screen? Some solemn cosmic waiting room before the universe turns up? That's already too much. Because darkness is something, a void is something, blank space is definitely something. Even silence isn't nothing. Silence is the absence of sound. The mind cannot think nothing without building a little set around it. It will supply a background, a mood, a visual grammar, and then say, look, nothing. But the darkness is something, the act of imagining is something. Thought seems to require differences, edges, relations, a here and a there, a before and an after. Take all that away, and the mind has nothing to grip. It just spins. So perhaps nothing is not merely hard to imagine. Perhaps imagination is simply the wrong tool. Imagination is a machine for making somethings. Even its emptiness comes furnished. This is where Wittgenstein becomes useful. Not because anyone wants to drag a philosopher in by the ankles, but I do, but because he understood that language has a nasty habit of making nonsense look respectable. Think about politics. Some philosophical problems begin when words slip away from their ordinary use. Grammar keeps up appearances. The sentence looks tidy, the noun sits where the noun should sit, and everybody is suddenly discussing grand metaphysical mystery that may, on inspection, be a verbal cock-up in a nice hat. And nothing is exactly that sort of word. It behaves like a noun, so we treat it like one. We say nothing as though we are naming a peculiar object, a thing called nothing, an item on reality's stock list. But that's the mistake. Grammar gives the illusion of reference, and philosophy, being way too impressed by its own furniture, takes the bait. So when we ask, does nothing exist, or what is nothing, or was there nothing before the universe, it's possible we're not uncovering the deepest secret of reality. We may simply be getting mugged by syntax, which is a terrible way to spend an afternoon. And then physics turns up, as it often does, looking like the smartest thing in the room. Popular science loves the idea that particles pop out of nothing, or that the universe came from nothing. It sounds marvellous, fits neatly on book jackets, but the nothing of physics is not usually nothing in the full philosophical sense. It's a vacuum, a field state, a quantum condition, a law-governed structure, a framework with measurable properties, which is to say, not nothing, merely a very austere something. That's not a criticism of physics. Physics is doing its job. The problem is the word nobody wants to say. The universe may have emerged from a highly structured, law-bound physical condition that was not made of ordinary matter, but was still emphatically not being. It lacks poetry, and marketing departments tend to dislike accuracy whenever drama is available. But a universe with laws isn't nothing. A field is not nothing. A vacuum is not nothing. Potential is not nothing. It's reality on starvation rations, sure, and fascinating, yes. Nothing, no. And this is where the old question starts to wobble. Why is there something rather than nothing? It's a magnificent question, grand, ancient. The sort of question that makes people stare at the ceiling and forget to put the bins out. But maybe it contains a trap, because it treats nothing as though it were a real alternative, as though reality had two roads available, something or nothing. And for reasons unknown, it took the something road. But perhaps there was no road. Perhaps absolute nothing was never a contender. Perhaps being doesn't require an opposite option in the way grammar suggests. We can imagine thinner and thinner versions of reality, less matter, less structure, less activity, less everything. But every attempt to strip reality back seems to leave some residue. A law, a condition, a possibility, a state of affairs, something. However minimal, however strange, however unhelpful in a conversation with normal people. Maybe we cannot get all the way down to nothing because nothing is not a place reality could ever have been. It's not a possible condition. It may be an impossible one, or worse, a meaningless one. And that's an irritating possibility. Not that the universe heroically defeated nothing, but that nothing was never available in the first place. So where does this leave us? It leaves us as usual, slightly betrayed by language. Nothing looks like a word, small, clean, useful. But the moment we look at it properly, it splits apart. Sometimes it means emptiness, sometimes absence, sometimes zero, sometimes silence, sometimes loss, sometimes death, sometimes a mathematical placeholder, and sometimes a mathematical fantasy wearing a hat it has no right to own. And yet the word persists, because at a human level it does real work. We do know a kind of nothing. We know the nothing of experience, the not there, the missing, the gone, the thing that should have happened and didn't. That nothing matters. It hurts us, it shapes us, it leaves marks. But absolute nothing, if you like, real nothing, the total absence of everything, cannot be pictured, cannot be experienced, cannot be described without becoming something else. The moment it enters thought, it acquires shape, and shape is already too much. So perhaps nothing is not a hidden substance behind reality, not a dark room beyond the edge of consciousness, nor a great blank waiting patiently before creation. Perhaps the only nothing available to us is the human one, the lived one, the one made of absence and recognition. The objective version, if it is such a thing, remains permanently out of reach, not because it's mysterious or because it's shy, but because it may be impossible, or meaningless, or both. Which is irritating, obviously. We begin with the grandest emptiness imaginable and end up with a problem of grammar. That may be fitting. The emptiest word in the language turns out to be crowded with physics, logic, philosophy, memory, death, languish, and the odd limits of consciousness itself. Nothing's not nothing, and perhaps that's why space still captures the imagination. Not because it's empty, but because it isn't. We keep hurling ourselves through the supposed void as though it were blank, clean and waiting for us. But it isn't. Space is not nothing. The universe is not nothing. And even our best word for emptiness turns out to be full. We don't travel through nothingness. We travel through a reality so busy, layered and resistant to simplification that our old poetic shorthand collapses the moment we look at it properly. Which in the end is probably a far better reason to go.